Hi everyone, welcome back. Second sesh. So this week we're going to be talking about environment and time a bit, but just quickly, just to recap. So first class, we talked about the poets, we talked about why I think it's important, what the goals are, your 5 to 6 really strong points which are going to help the players during the match. We talked about the importance of validating emotions. 90% of this stuff is emotional, we've talked about that already. So hopefully a lot of you will have had done your player profile. As I said last week, this is the most important bit, and this is probably the one that stays the most consistent throughout the poets. So if you do 100 matches, the player won't change all that much. Hopefully you've involved your kids and you've got their feedback and their thoughts. Really, really, really important, because this is the foundation of everything we do, is that you now know what they believe their game style to be. Again, you'll know this by what is their favourite player, what do they like to do in certain situations. So you should know now what are their weapons and strengths, what are their favourite patterns offensively and defensively. For example, when I was playing, I used to hit a really aggressive sort of side spin into out slice down the line and then recover off centre on the deuce side. The reason I did this was because I wanted my opponent to hit up, and I knew I was fast enough to get to whatever ball they hit with a high contact, and I'd attack into the space on my forehand. I must have done that 1,000 times. Most of the time it worked. It was one of my favourite patterns. Now it's quite obscure, starting an offensive play with an into-out slice down the line onto someone's weapon most of the time. But like I said, it worked for me. Defensive patterns, we all know them. Someone's coming to the net and you go defensive slice short cross court, you bomb forward, try and take the next volley. We know, buy height and time when you're under big pressure. One of the ones you might not know is when you're watching the Russian female players, they're actually taught to counter line. And when you watch it on the telly, it looks like it's high risk and low percentage, but it's not, because they practice it so much and it's part of their game style, it's part of their identity. Okay, so we should have lots of practice on that. Weaknesses is one that, again, I don't like using the word weakness for our players. I like to talk about weapons, strengths. A strength is something that is on the other side of the weapon. So you can't talk about having a world-class forehand without having a very, 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 very good strength on your backhand. A strength is something which is unattackable, which can attack sometimes, but ultimately is there to set up your weapon and protect you. First serve weapon, second serve strength. Weapon, forehand, strength, backhand and movement. There's that. So it's like the flip side of the coin. You can't have a world-class weapon without having a world-class strength to back it up. You just can't. Hopefully you've done some work on the opponent. So the first thing we talked about was the opponent's game style, and then how does that link back into your game style? So you're an aggressive baseliner. You think they're a counter puncher. Okay, what does that mean? What do you do? How do you go from there? X, Y, Z. What are their weapons and strengths? Do they have any patterns they like to get into? Do they have any obvious plays they like? Is there a way of exploiting any weaknesses? How can I open a weakness and then exploit it? That's two different things. So just because you know that someone's got a really dodgy backhand doesn't mean you can find that backhand all the time. And sometimes it might do something you might think that doesn't feel right to get to it. So if someone's got a brilliant forehand and a terrible backhand, you might have to go to the forehand once to open the backhand, and that's a risk. Cap fell off. And then finally we talked about the considerations of your opponent, things like technical considerations. What are their grip like? What's their swing like? How are they when they're winning? Are they the underdog? All these different things which will make up your opponent profile. So hopefully you've done some work on that. The ones that I got sent through were excellent. I got sent through a brilliant one from one of my players, which was brilliant, really, really excellent, good work. And it's good to see that ownership coming through. Okay, so as I said, this week is about environment and time. First up, we're going to watch a video. Now I've found a really good clip because I have some personal experience of what he's talking about right now. Literally, I'm not saying like, oh, I know what he means. This match was important to me. So, really pleased with it. Have a watch, and then we'll come back and see what you think. All right.
I watched most of his first round match because I think he was maybe playing just before me. and while I was getting ready, he was playing the whole time. So I actually saw quite a bit of it. That's why I knew to some extent what I was getting into. Then on the other hand, the atmosphere, yes, I kind of expected something like this, especially under the roof. That he was going to have some supporters that were going to, have chants and stuff. And plus, I must tell you, I've been quite intrigued before even he was in my section of the draw. After he qualified, I was reading a lot about his story, and then next thing you know, he's like one match away from me if I win. Of course, then it happened, and more stories build up. So I thought very well prepared, and I really enjoyed it. I thought he played very well, and my approach was going into the match that I was playing a top 50 guy.
Okay, so there was Federer talking about beating a guy called Marcus Willis, second round Wimbledon 2016. Now, the reason I was really pleased to find that post-match interview is because Willis was one of my players. And he was doing really well. But Willis came with a lot of baggage, and we worked together for a few years. And he got quite good. He got to about 320 in the world. Got in really good shape, playing really well. And then towards the end of 2015, he got hit by a lot of really bad injuries. Hamstring when he was in France. A lot of things happened. It was bad luck. And it took a little bit of a hit on him. So when Wimbledon came around, we hadn't really trained properly for about 3 months. We were working together because he was working on my program at the time. But no, we hadn't done any sort of practice. And for me, he was finishing. He was winding down. He said, "I'm going to go and play the pre-qualies." I said, "Yeah, brilliant. Why not?" He got through that, and then we went to qualies, and he did really well. And the rest is history. Blah blah blah. For those of you who don't know Willis, I mean, you can go online. He was a very, very tricky player. He's a big, tall guy, 6'3", big lefty serve. But after that, bit of a counterpuncher and would do unorthodox things. So we practiced the in-to-out lefty slice a lot. Very good at lobs, countered line an awful lot. Went for shots that you're not taught. Very, very difficult to play. Would frustrate a lot of players. So the first round of Wimbledon, Willis played a guy called Berankis. And Berankis went out for the match. It was quite late on the Monday, and I was sitting, if you imagine the court like this, I was sitting back left here. So Willis starts up here, holds, Willis comes down, then he breaks and holds like that, just so fast. It was like to level 15. And then they change again, and Berankis comes down here, and I'm sitting here like this. And just sort of down to the left of me are Berankis' coach and friend, I don't know, some people. And Berankis came over, and he's talking away in there. I think he's Lithuanian, and I couldn't understand what they were saying, but his body language was panic stations, just absolute panic. He had no idea what he was moving into in that match. He just thought, "Oh, this guy's got lucky. He got through qualies. I'll be fine." He had no idea that Willis was a lot better than his ranking. He had no idea what was about to happen. He obviously hadn't thought that this was going to turn into a football match, which it did with the crowd. It went crazy. He had no idea, and he totally folded. He couldn't handle anything. Willis won so comfortably. It was over after about 10 minutes. Willis looked comfortable. It was a quick match. Yeah, absolutely fine. Now, if we watch the interview that we've just seen from Federer, we can see that quite clearly the level of preparation for that match was just a different world compared with what Berankis did. All right, so if we look at it, now I've watched thousands of those interviews after matches or before matches, and you just watch them, you listen to them, and some of them are quite funny and this and the other. After doing some work on this, on our poets, when I watch them now, I hear things really quickly. So that little, I think it was like 2-minute interview with Federer, we heard a lot of stuff there, which is quite clear to me that he does his own version of poets before matches, and it's probably amazing. It's probably like brilliant. But you can see how much detail he goes into. So Fed mentions that he watched most of the match, the first round. Okay. He also says later on that even as soon as he saw Willis in his part of the draw, he read up on him. That's how thorough that he went to. He looked and thought, okay, I might be playing him. I need to find out about this cat. And he obviously did. He makes the quote, "I knew what I was getting into." Now, when I heard that, I thought I think he meant tactically, and all that stuff I was talking about there, the lefty serve, the in-to-out slice, the lobbing, the angles. I think that's what Federer's saying there when he says, "I knew what I was getting into." He talks about environment, which is brilliant because that's what we're going to talk about today. He mentions the atmosphere. I think he's talking about the crowd at that point. He mentions being under the roof conditions. He mentions that he's probably not the favourite. The crowd are going to be up for it. They're going to be all this sort of thing. He talks a lot about the environment in that little tiny section there. He even makes the quote that he felt really well prepared for this match, which when you think about it is amazing, because Federer could have turned up for that match having not practiced for 2 weeks and still won the match really comfortably. But it's part of who he is, and probably part of why he's become such a legend, is because he will have shown unbelievable work ethic, unbelievable detail, and unbelievable discipline before that match. And he prepared absolutely superbly. And he did. You could tell just from the way he was talking. Now, I took from that he didn't just think about those things. He didn't think to himself, "Oh, all right, the roof's going to be closed, all right." I think he spoke to his coach about that, and they talked about it. You know, they saw Willis hitting the into-out slice down the round, and they probably practiced a few in that morning and said, "Okay, what do I do? Go this way and then go back behind?" Or no, what? They probably talked about it. They probably practiced a few. That's what I took from that. Just that little, screenshot into his mindset before that match shows you the level of detail that he went to there, which I think is absolutely amazing, and also brilliant because it highlights exactly what we're going into. Okay, so environment. Okay, environment. So I really like environment. If you remember the 2 videos we watched last time with the 2 players, I gave them lots of clues on environment. You know, I mentioned it, I talked about it, and they didn't pick up on it because players tend not to. It's an interesting one. There's the obvious ones. Oh, it's windy. Oh, I'm on clay. But they don't really seem to see it. They think about themselves and they think about their opponent, but they don't really think about the environment, which is strange because it's such a ridiculously huge thing. Every match you play will be on a tennis court and with some balls. Most tennis matches are going to be outdoors, so it's a huge part of it. I actually find this one the most enjoyable and the most interesting. So if we go back to our poets, our sheets, court and balls. So court surface. Now we all know all the courts. Okay, but remember this is a higher level of detail now. So take acrylic there, for example. At work at Bromley, we've got 4 outdoor acrylic and we've got 6 indoor acrylic. The 4 outdoor, courts 1 to 4 as you look at it, and courts 5 and 6, those 3, if we group those 3 together, are all worlds apart in terms of how they play. Absolutely different levels, all 3 of them. So a lot of it comes down to how new are the courts. Older tends to be quicker. How much sand is in the paint mix. More sand tends to be slower. And the composition, so sometimes certain acrylics can be a little bit shinier than other rougher acrylics. One of the great ways of doing it is just get to the court, bend down, have a little feel. Rub your hand over it. If it feels smooth and slick, it's going to be grease lightning. If it feels rough, it's going to be slower. If you rub the court at work outside, you'll feel a lot rougher than if you rub them on the indoors. Don't forget, and I'm going to keep hammering this point all session now, this is how it links back to your player. So don't just write down now, oh, grass, brilliant, it's fast, it bounces low. How does that link back to your player? Do they have a pattern that'll benefit? Do they want to do something differently? Everything now links back. Also, try and get more higher level of detail on this. So for grass, for example, everyone will tell you, oh, grass, it normally bounces lower and it's a bit quicker. And they're absolutely right. But actually, what people don't realise is on grass, it takes spin very well. So things like drop shots work on grass massively. Kick serves on grass, shoot to the right for a right-hander. And it's about how much is on the ball when it bounces. So normally a court is quick because when it bounces there's nothing to stop it. It just straight through. Clay, There's a lot of grit, it bounces, and there's a lot of grip, and it comes up. And it's all about how well courts take spin. Grass is a weird one because grass is quick, it is slick, it goes, but also takes spin very well. A lot of these courts have, we've already touched on it with the acrylic, a lot of these courts have different versions of each other. Clay, think about all the clay. We've got Sutton clay in the bubble, Sutton clay outside, totally different. Surbiton clay. So there's 3 artificial clays there, all massively different. You've got Roehampton real clay, but it plays, you know, well, if you have to play on it. And then you've got Roland Garros, all clay. Every single one of those is a different ball strike, ball bounce. So, yeah, get into it. Find some stuff out. If you're not sure, ask people. A lot of the players will know without even knowing. So they'll say things like, "Oh yeah, it's a little bit da da da," and then you just got to ask a few more questions, and you get to it. You'll get your information there. Indoors or outdoors. This is more about the lighting. But we know that the big thing is indoors there's no atmosphere. That's a huge thing. But still, indoors, when you change ends, sometimes indoors, the balcony, can you see through? Is there a different light? Does it affect how you look at the ball? It's worth talking about. And a really important one for me, which balls are being used? Brilliant. Tennis balls are so different. So, I like Technofiber taller ones because after a couple of weeks, they're still great. They really keep the, when in their later life, they're brilliant. Slaz New Wimbeys are amazing. They're absolutely fantastic for about an hour, and then they turn into these huge footballs. The head ones we use at work are pretty good. Yeah, they're sort of middle value in most areas. US Open Wilsons, fantastic when they start. Then they go into skinheads who you can't control them. They go smaller. So some balls when they're old go bigger, like Slazzy Wimby, Dunlop Fort, head a little bit like that. Other balls go smaller, like Wilson US Opens. Nassau's. Oh God, I used to hate Nassau's. These are French, and I think you use them a lot on the continent, and just you can't control them. I look back now and I think to myself, I really used to whinge about Nassau tennis balls. They used them all over. If I'd have been with me, so if I'd had a coach with me, I could have asked, well, what don't you like about it? Oh, I don't like, and I said, I don't like the fact that you can't control it when they get old. And then my coach could have said, right, well, that happens roughly around how long, blah, blah, blah. Well, you need to change your velocity, but keep your racket head speed high. Bosh. So I'm way better prepared when I walk on court there, and when it happens, I would have handled it a lot better. Looking back now in my memories, I can remember getting very upset about Nassau tennis balls in the third set and just hating them. Whereas if I'd have prepared properly, or if I'd had my coach with me and prepared properly, then I would have handled it way better. So find out the balls. When you speak to your kids now about this, you'll say to them, which balls do you prefer, blah, blah, blah. They'll all have their favourites and they'll all have their least favourites. Find out why and then spin it round. How can you turn that into a positive or even just validate the emotion? Yeah. Climate, massive one. Wind, we all know. I won't give you any clues on that, but that can be a little assignment. How do you play with the wind on your back? How do you play again in your face? What about a swirly side wind? Don't forget, I don't want you to tell me, when you got your wind on your back, you need to hit more spin because everyone knows that. It's how does it relate to your player? If they have a pattern that might get affected by the wind, then you've got to make a note of it and then talk about it with your player if it happens, if it's a real thing. So we've got rain, we've got heat, we've got humidity, we've got the cold, we've got altitude. The only ones we need to touch on there, heat speeds things up. Okay, so if it's a hot day, the air is warmer, the ball moves through the air quicker. The opposite for cold. And then you have the metaphysical implications of being cold. If your player is prone to stiffness, if they have a niggly injury, maybe you have to put procedures in place for them to stay warm at the changeover. Just talk about it. Get your towel around your shoulders. Heat packs in your bag, whatever, it doesn't matter. The main one we have to talk about there is altitude. It will happen, they will play. Altitude is, because there's less air in the atmosphere, the ball has less resistance, so it goes through it a lot quicker. So it has the effect of being incredibly hard to control. You can hit missiles, so everyone's serving 130 miles an hour, but no one can control a ball. That's altitude. I remember playing Mexico City was a big altitude, and they had special Babolat balls which were a size and a half, so you could play with them, so you could control it. That's what they used in this place. And I remember when my first practice with them, I was like, oh my god, what are these? And I couldn't hit a ball. 2 weeks later, I love these things because you can actually get them in the court. So that's altitude. Events, we touched on it. Federer actually spoke about it in his thing where he talks about the importance of the event and the crowd. Are they going to be neutral? You're playing a Scottish guy in Scotland. There's going to be a renter crowd there, and it's going to be big, and they're going to be clapping your double faults and all sorts. Very emotional for players, so very important that we talk about it. The kind of match that it is might dictate the crowd. So is it a team event? Is it County Cup? Is it an international event? All these things, again, you've got to talk about this stuff. So that's it, that's environment, all these things. I mean, this is what I could think of. You might be able to think of other things. What I would do now, and this is going to be the task for this week, is there's a lot of detail here, so break it down and make some little notes in between here. Remember, everything has to be linked back to your player. So there's no point putting hard, might be quick, might be medium, might be slow. If it's quick, go for the first shot more. It's not enough information. How does that link into your player? Which one is their favourite? Which one is their least favourite? What? All these things. Which one of those exacerbates their game? Which one of those improves their game? Which one of these is a leveler? All these sorts of things. Find out what they know about the climate. What do they know about playing in a side wind? What do they know about altitude? What do they know about balls? They'll definitely know this. They will know this stuff. They will know without maybe knowing about it. So talk about it. And there we go. So you've got loads of notes there. Now, don't worry. This is your first draft. It's going to look nothing like your final draft. Okay, so that's environment. Okay, so moving on again now. So POET is time, and time is 1 above. There's not all that much in time. This is our time and our opponent's time. It refers to 2 separate things. So one is like very literal. How much time do players take in between points? I've never really had a player who gets upset with a player not taking enough time, but it does happen. But I've had players get frustrated with opponents taking ages in between points loads of times. When I think of time, I used to, a rival of mine was a guy called Richard Bloomfield, really good player, got to about 190, I think 200 in the world. Really, really, really good player. A year older than me, really big first serve. What he did was, he was in a really strong ownership of how much time he was taking in between points. So he would ace you, and then he'd take ages, and then he'd ace you again. So it really got frustrating over. So imagine that for 3 hours. So you get aced, and all you want to do when you get aced is right, next point. Get into this point. Let me get some balls hit. Let me hit some balls. Come on. He would take ages. You'd be there waiting for him, and then he'd ace you again. Oh my god! And it was like this the whole match. Even the way he played, his tactical and his shots were very sharp on times. He would do things like exploit the forward and backward, take time off you very well. Never really hit that big. Very good at using his slice, and he'd mix it up. So yeah, he's who I think. If you YouTube him, he'll be on there. He's a good player. But yeah, he was one of my least favourite players to play because of the time aspect of it. So you have. How much time do players take in between shots? And again, it has to be talked about, especially if the player, the opponent, takes ages. All right, because it does frustrate your players. It does frustrate people, but not if there's a plan. Not if we've talked about it. It's like we said last week. Anything that's emotional, if you validate it, you can handle it way better. The brain can handle it as long as you've prepared them. And 99 times out of 100, preparing is talk about it. Oh, this player apparently takes ages in between points. Oh, really? Yeah. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Okay, done. That's it. 10 seconds. Our time also breaks into do you need to change the rhythm of the point to give yourself more time? And then this is almost exclusively for defensive situations. Do you need to be aware of when you're getting attacked to give it a moon ball to buy yourself some time to get back in? Again, heavily linked into the court surface, the environment, heavily linked into things. So you might look at that and think, okay, well, if I'm against the wind's in my face, I might not be able to do that as well. So I might have to hit through it. There might be a subtle change there. Opponent's time, so you need to know how he manipulates time. Does he try and take a time away from you? Is it possible to take time off him? Is his recovery really tight to the baseline? Are they slow left to right, so maybe you take time and go behind? Or on the flip side, are they absolutely amazing at this? You know, is there something you have to really watch out for? Do you have to have more discipline? And then you've also got change rhythm of the point, destabilize them. So let's pretend you're playing a player and they are like lacing it, and you know that if you give them pace, they love it and they hit hard at you, and you might decide with your coach that actually you probably can't handle this. You know, if we go one-on-one and we're drilling balls back and forth against each other, actually we think we're going to come out a loser. I've had this done to me a lot, and I look back now and I can see that when people got smart, they knew that if they went toe-to-toe on the ground strokes, they're going to lose, so they don't. So it's 1-2, change it with a slice. 1-2, moon ball. 1-2, really hard, and then a drop shot. And you don't get any rhythm. So that has to be a consideration of your opponents. Rarely, because at the age group we're talking about now, it's unlikely that a player will be able to hit any of our kids off. But it might happen, especially the higher you go. In those situations, the last thing you do is give them the ammunition. So if you've identified that someone has got great strike, really good hit, really good weapons, moves well, the last thing you do is give them 4 shots in here. Okay, you give them 2 and you change it. You make them hit down there, you make them hit up here. You totally take the pace away. If they're amazing at returning, you might go 1 nuke and then the next one loads of cuts, so you never give them the same feeling twice in a row. That's what it means when it says change the rhythm of the points, destabilize the opponent. Okay, there we go. This one is not much. There's not an awful lot there on time. Obviously, massive is about our time. Make sure you get that locked in, because that won't change all that much. Players tend to be susceptible to the same things in most matches, so you need to be on it with our time. And then opponent's time, have a go with it. I can think of loads of players at work that manipulate time in different ways. Some are incredibly good defensively, they go wide, they put the ball up really high. Okay, how do you do that? How do you deal with it? Yeah, really important. As always, any questions, any points, any work you want me to look at, fire it over and we'll get going. All right? Cheers.